cold of some sort. My voice seems like I'm upset.
It's going around,
That's what I hear.
Eric.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. It's about
Yeah.
that time of year.
The boys team had a whole bunch of guys just getting through it.
Oh yeah. This one came with a headache, which the head pressure, that sucks.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't focus. So like if I'm mashed potatoes today,
I don't even feel for you right now.
yeah, I'm not asking for
But
it to.
when you're even have the sniffles, you want to just lose your mind.
I don't like it.
No.
But it's the focus part. I also don't like being babied when I'm sick either.
So I'm the same.
My biggest pet peeve, not my biggest, but a pet peeve, like when you're sick, just like you're fine, man. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You don't have to be like miserable because you're sick.
2-3 days.
Yeah, but it's not. It's like an excuse to just be like miserable and like mopey, and
Yeah.
I don't like doing that.
No need.
Just
Cool.
do what you can.
Yeah.
Um.
Get better.
So what's up? What do you got? Do you got anything to say, or I got a couple things to say? But
You
if
say.
like mine are like related to the podcast. So
Oh.
if you have anything more fun,
Probably not.
no.
No.
So a couple things. First thing is we have a new sponsor. I'm going to talk about it probably more next week once I have some time because it just happened yesterday. So at the time of this recording, it's Helios. Helios is going to be sponsoring the podcast, which is cool. So we're going to have a discount code set up with that. I had a real nice conversation with their CEO named Bill, and we had a really cool conversation because he was actually an engineer from MIT. So we got
Speaks your language.
Yeah, so we got to nerd out when we were chatting about the tech behind the product. So if you haven't seen Helios before, the reason actually it came up was a few podcasts ago, or maybe several now, we were talking about like how technology changes the game. And that was one of the devices that somebody had asked me about, and I hadn't used it before. So on another one of our members, John is going to know who he is, John. He actually connected me with the CEO of Helios to start just chatting and seeing if there's any like kind of work relationship that could happen there, and it ended up working, which is really cool. So I'll have more up on that later on, but Helios is going to be a cool thing that you guys can look into. And I like the way that they have, because when we do ad stuff, this is another thing I wanted to say. Like the ad things, I don't like doing them, but if we do them, like you can trust that it's stuff that we actually use, that we actually like. It's not just stuff that's just stuff. So it's stuff that I've either tried or I have experience with or I know about or whatever. It's not just going to be some random thing that we haven't vetted just because they want to pay or something. That's just not how it works for us. So that's a cool thing. So I'll have more up on that in the coming weeks. And then the other thing is the live show. So man, this is actually a cool thing. I sent it out to our members that we're gonna do a live show, and I actually got some sweet feedback. And I appreciate like a lot of you guys that are actually writing in things that you would like to see or things how you would like it to go, or actually giving some like valuable input on how we could structure it. And this is what's sweet about the membership thing, having that community, I guess would be the word, where people can kind of give us their feedback on how they like things to go and whatever, and we can kind of build it together so you guys can kind of be a part of it. So I opened up that survey now to anybody that listens can now go like fill out and give us some feedback if you're interested in coming. Some people have been sending emails in about it and stuff and saying their teams are interested and whatever. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to look at doing a lineup of like several speakers. So it'll be something like a 6-hour day tops, probably. Maybe like 3 or 4 speakers. You and I would come in at the end. So it could be maybe like a former player, coach in the industry, nutritionist, psychologist, etc. So they'll all be people that are reputable in the industry. We're not just going to get anybody, obviously, to come talk. So that would be like through your connections or my connections. And then we're looking at getting some vendors set up where they'll have some whatever giveaway things or bags you guys can take home and those kinds of things. So that's kind of the idea of what we're looking at. So if you guys are interested in that, that's coming up. If you guys would like, I'm going to put the link in this episode again to fill out that survey form of just like some basic information that'll help us kind of shape how we do it if we do it. We're looking like we're going to have it in Hamilton as the first one, like I said last week. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to have some advanced sale for people that are members to get tickets. So if you guys are interested in doing that and becoming members, you can do that. The links are all down in the bio as well. And that's what kind of makes the world go around for us right now. So that's all I have to say on that. Anything to add
on that stuff?
On any or
no,
anything?
It's just it's good, man. I mean, I think if anybody your feedback is important to us because then we could kind of custom tailor topics and get to understand our clientele better. So the more we know, the more we can help, or more we can be for you, or do things. So
Yep.
that's that. Yeah,
Yep, for
it's
sure.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And dude, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then it kind of goes along the lines of that. It's like it's amazing how many people when I'm out of town and stuff recognize me, or they give me the I know you,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah,
It's amazing now. So
yeah.
it's
It's
pretty
honestly
cool. So like I like again I encourage you all to say hi to me if if you're looking at me with three eyes,
mhm.
just say, "Are you the PowerTech guy or whatever?"
Yeah.
Yeah, always nice to see people.
Yeah,
I
it's
ran
cool.
into someone in Barrie the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
great.
awesome. Man,
Yeah.
and I love having the conversations too. I had a couple consults last week that were awesome with um some members that it's just cool to meet people and like hear people's perspective on things. It's really fun. So
Hey guys, my name is David. For the last roughly year or so, I've been a member of the PowerTech podcast, and I've trusted Eric and Andy to help me as a hockey dad, raising my kids and trying to figure out the answers. I don't have all the answers, and it's a great source of information, and it's an area where I feel comfortable leaning on to help me make better decisions. With that said, one thing I do know about is supplements. I find it's hard to navigate the whole supplement world and make sure that you're using products that work, that are effective, and again, are science research based. Blue Star products, incredible brand. Their products are based on research, science, the products work, trademark patent ingredients, and you can find all of the research just by scanning QR codes that are right on the back of the product. Thank you to Eric and Andy for their podcast. I think it's amazing, and definitely give Blue Star products a try.
any whom are what you wanted to talk about today. This one's coming from you. We kind of were playing around with the idea of kind of becoming or making yourself a wanted commodity, or the idea of kind of fixing problems, starting with yourself to fix problems, and around that kind of thread. Um, so kind of before we go into it, I want you to just kind of lay out your kind of what you were thinking in this area, or where your thoughts are at with this, and then we can kind of like narrow the scope on kind of how we're going to talk about the idea
Yep.
for today.
Here's the thing. I think in life, when things are good, they're good, and there's when there's no adversity, it's like you just truck along, right? What I find is obviously because I work with a junior team, and a lot of the kids that parents that I talk to, is reoccurring themes is like when things start to go south, or when things don't go exactly your way, or whatever. It's like the question is you're it's the victim mentality. If that's the best way I could say it, it's you're a victim. Um, someone got a more power play than me. Like why? So it's like okay, it's a good question, but why should be internally you should look at that when things aren't going well, or it's the coach, right? It's always got to be the coach's fault. Like so a lot of so my point of that is like when things aren't going your way, I just find most of the time and it's the easy default is to blame, to look around and blame, and then when you start getting into that blame mode or not looking within, then you're digging yourself a deeper hole. And then now you start hanging around with the boys or around with people. And then all of a sudden it's like this hamster wheel that you keep going around, and you become miserable until you start looking deep inside and saying, look, how do we fix problems? And the problem starts with me. And then if it's not fixable and you've done everything you can, then maybe it's time, maybe you can look outward. But I think a lot of times you solve your problems by looking at within. That's number one. And then it's like I was just talking to a group I had this morning, a junior team, and they're going to be playing a top team this weekend, first place team, probably an older team. And that was a message I sent with them before I left. I said, "You guys got them this weekend. They're playing Caledon or no, what's Collingwood? They're playing Collingwood this weekend." I said, "Here, either they're a first place team, they're a good team." And I said, here's what I would encourage you to do this day is to find a way to well, obviously a way to win. They beat them once, and I said, they're going to be hungry. You know that they're going to come out flying, but everyone has a role, and find a way to be better. So I know because it's in the OJHL. There's a lot of scouts from college, NHL, junior scouts that are there, and I said people are going to want to see. Well, let's put it this way: if you're playing a top place team, there's going to be some players on that team that people are looking at. So even if you're not I'm not saying they can't compete with them. I'm just saying that if someone's out to look at a top guy, if you're in that guy's face all day, then you get looked at too, right? And and so it's basically find ways to win, find ways to compete, find a reason to be relevant. And by doing things like that, you become a commodity because what happens is you've made it a priority to find someone on that team or a role in that game to really disrupt their success. And if I'm playing you and you're a top D or a top forward, like my goal should be to get in your face all game, because if scouts are watching you and I'm in your face all game, then all of a sudden my name gets brought up a lot. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you make impacts at every game, and that's kind of where I was starting with that. Is like um, that's not exactly what we're going to be talking about, but that's my theory
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah, I like the line of thinking too, because I remember we did a podcast again, another one a while ago now, about like kind of how to stand out, and we were talking about like from a skill perspective and from a gameplay perspective and whatever, and this kind of along those lines, but a little bit of a different thread on it because I agree. I don't know if there was like one thing that happened recently that kind of started making you think this way, but for me, I know that it's really common for like I'm thinking of this one team that I was talking to the coach on one of these teams, and they were older guys. I think it was a older junior player, 18 or 19 or whatever, and he was new to the team, and the expectation on him was kind of like you're going to be kind of the guy or one of the guys, and then from this player, he started and maybe he wasn't doing all that they expected, and right away it's like, well, I should play with this guy. Well, maybe I should play with this guy, or no, I can't because of these guys, or I can't do it because of this thing's happening, or now this hurts, or whatever. And it seems like you for this in this particular situation, it's like you were supposed to be the guy. Like you were supposed to be the guy that other people say I want to play with that guy. So I find it's just funny because sometimes, especially with players that maybe they might, I don't want to put it maybe in this way. I know I'm all over the place, but I don't want to put it in like a negative light where maybe players think they're more than they are, and they think that because I'm not in this situation or this situation, that's why I'm not doing all that I can do. And I really think that's a common thing that people think. I think that at all levels too, like starting right from when you're 10 years old, right from when you're 10. It's like, well, he won't pass to me, or well, my coach doesn't won't put me at center, or he keeps making me play D, or yada yada yada. And just like there's the laundry list of excuses. And something I was having a conversation last week with one of these consults, and um, the mom I was talking to was kind of saying like, oh, the coach's philosophy is kind of like this, and like, is that right? Like, is that what the philosophy should be? And I was kind of saying like, people have different philosophies, so I don't necessarily agree with this part of the philosophy that you're saying, but if that's the philosophy, that's philosophy, and you have to figure out how to work within that, you know. So just as one example, there one of these kids was scoring a lot of goals, and the coach kind of said like, you can't score anymore, and then the kid was like kind of lost. So the mom was saying like, I'm watching and it looks like he doesn't know what to do now, right? Because he's used to going and trying to score. So I was kind of saying, okay, so like what else could he do now instead of that, where he's still playing the game and still doing things the right way? And I find that all of these things, like that just goes to the point of, if you're looking around for something else to fix your situation, then I don't feel like you're starting in the right place. And I was guilty of it playing junior. Like I don't exclude myself from that, but I think now because of that experience, I've learned from that, and I immediately will go to myself of like what I'm not doing to get the thing that I want. And it has nothing to do with hockey necessarily for me anymore. But like one quote that I really like that maybe kids can start to think about is, the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. That's one that I really love. I'm really on that one right now because it's everybody to a degree knows the thing that they're not doing that they could be doing that would help to a degree, and people just don't do it. It's like, yeah, that magic thing. It's not playing with this guy on your line. It's not the coach doing this. It's not whatever. Maybe those things could help, but at the end of the day, this underlying problem of the thing you're not doing is still going to be there, and until you address that, you're going to always run into an issue at some point. And that's coming from me. That's coming from experience because I did that for sure in junior, where I was like, this is a problem, and this is a problem, and this is a problem. And I remember I've told this story 20 times. I know I'm going long here. Sorry. I remember like clear as day. I've said this a bunch of times on the podcast, but I remember I think it was my second year in junior, and I had like a 12-game pointless streak. And finally, my coach brought me in and was like, "What is going on, dude?" Kind of thing. Like he initiated the dialogue. So, and I remember avoiding it. I didn't go talk to my coach. And I remember my dad saying, "Go talk to the coach. Go talk." I remember him telling me, "Go talk to the coach. Go see what he's thinking. Whatever." I'm like, "No, I know what he's gonna say. He's gonna say this. He's gonna say this. I don't want to talk to him. Whatever." And all I was doing was just avoiding the conversation because it's uncomfortable and it's hard to do. That's what I was doing. So he finally called me in, and I just threw the book of excuses at him like any kid would. I was just like, well, this, and it's hard to perform when you don't put me on special teams, and it's hard to do this and whatever. And at the end of the conversation, he just said, okay, if you don't start doing something to contribute, I'm going to start scratching you. And that is the take home message at the end of the day. He's as the coach, he said, I'm not changing anything. If you don't start doing something, then you're not playing. That was the take home message. So all my excuses, all my everything could just be thrown out the window because that was the reality. And that was the reality. And maybe it would have helped if I had a better player on my line or I was on the power play. I would have felt more confident or fill in the blank with whatever. But at the end of the day, I had issues in my own game that I was not addressing. And that's where I needed to start. It wasn't with, him doing something else to help me, for
Yeah, there's
example.
23 other guys, so
Yeah.
maybe helping you doesn't help anybody else
Yeah,
or the
right.
whole team, right, in general. So he probably wanted you, and I'm sure that that decision for him to get your head out of your ass was a big, it was a help for your game because you had to reach different levels to learn different things and dig deep to be consistent at whatever it is that he needed you to do. So yeah. So part of the inspiration was kind of like if you could go over the last few weeks, the Edmonton Oilers were struggling. We got locally the Spitfires were really struggling, and when people struggle, you hear about how we're going to fix this, and it's always looking from the outside, right? So that's what I mean. In Edmonton, where do you look? I mean, you got the two best players in the world, so that's a good start. So if anybody can get out of a mess, it's them, right? And of course, they had maybe some goaltending issues and stuff, but they fired the coach, and maybe that was it. Maybe it's not. But you're like, okay, why did they fire the coach? Were the guys not buying in? Were they like what was the reason? Right? And I'm not suggesting either way that it was the coach's fault or it wasn't. Same with Windsor, right? Was it the coach's fault or was it like I'm sure when things go down, when things go south, when you have collectively a bunch of guys that are somewhat quitting, not quit. I don't want to say quitting, but not giving everything I can and looking for excuses, saying our team's not good enough and all that kind of stuff. Then that's a downward spiral. Instead of looking inside and doing something maybe a little bit special, then you still see guys. This is what I like is you see guys like in Windsor, for example, like when they were struggling, they still had their top guy like Green Tree putting pucks in the net and doing his job. So it's like that's the kind of player you want to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What's funny too is like there's always a guy. There's not always a guy, I shouldn't say that, but a lot of times you'll find a guy on a bad team that it doesn't matter what happens, they still are able to perform to a certain degree. So like one guy that comes to mind for me is Arky when playing. He just signed with Kitchener. He's 4th round pick to Kitchener last year, and he played on a U16 team that they weren't a great team. They weren't like a horrendous team, but they weren't a great team, and there was a lot of gaps from like any aspect of that team that you look at. There's a lot of gaps, but it didn't matter what happened. This kid found a way to put the puck in the net or battle or get noticed.
Yeah.
And
maybe if he played on a top team, he would have went in the second round or not. But it doesn't matter. He signed, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly. So you can always find, and I'm thinking of like, I don't know what like I can't think of any other examples off the top of my head of maybe guys that are in the OHL now that came from a poor team that are now more dominant players, but at the time when they played for their AAA team that maybe wasn't very good, they found a way to either be consistent or do something that was useful or whatever. Maybe that Nesbitt kid that's in Windsor now.
Sure.
Nesbitt, is that it? So he played. It was Sarnia. I don't think they were very good.
No, they weren't.
And he was a 1st round pick.
Yeah.
Right. OHL pick. It's like he figured out a way to do his thing. Nice.
All over my face.
I know. He figured out a way to do his thing and get noticed, and
well,
now he's in the OHL.
Another example would be in Guelph. There's Parker Snowgrove. So he was a 2nd rounder, and he was under the shadows apparently of Robrick. Rubrick. He was with the first overall. He went second, but he was supposed to go first or second, whatever, right? And then there was another one on his team that
Oh, he played
was
on that London team?
yeah. So there was a couple first rounders, and there was another one that went like roughly around the same second or third round or whatever. But you didn't hear his name so much. But from what I was talking to someone, and they said, yeah, but he was the straw that stirred the drink. He was doing all the dirty work, the hard work for other people. And when you watch him in the OHL, he's a young guy, and he works his ass off. He does little things. He's got some speed, and it's not all the prettiest stuff, but he's a good grindy guy that can last for a long time.
Yeah. So do you want to kind of take the thread of um, kind of how to make yourself a wanted player regardless of circumstance, or
Yeah.
getting out of a situation that's not optimal, etc. So I wrote a few
Which
things
which
down.
one do we want to go with first? You keep me on track.
Okay,
here.
so let's do
brother.
let's do the first one. Like if how to kind of make yourself a wanted player regardless of what circumstance you're in. A wanted player meaning on another team or at a higher level or someone who's watching you.
Yeah.
How can you make them think, okay, this is a guy that I would still want? Because instead of just being a crybaby and everything sucks and woe is me, it's like, what are the things, like how about some strategies here of what we can do? So I wrote a few things down, and then you can kind of just take it however
Yeah.
you like. So first thing I wrote down was kind of like, what does the team need that you're currently on? So
Yeah,
like what?
so that's a good. Let's go right
Okay.
there. So what does a team need? You look at this in a lot of different ways, right? But one of the ways you can look at is what does your team need today? Like what does your team need in this situation? So you could be, let's say, a really maybe whatever team that you are. Maybe you're a high scoring team and you're getting shut down. So maybe it is you need, maybe guys are bullying your team a little bit and you just need someone to step up. So that's like a team need. That shows a lot of character. It shows, okay, this guy understands the game, right? It also means who you're on a line with, right? Or partnered with. Could be, if you're playing with two really offensive players, maybe you can chip in that way. But like, what does that line need? What does that team need from you? But of course, you got to look at your skill set and be who you are, right? So,
Well, can I just pause you for a sec there?
well, of course you can, Eric.
Because this is another thing too. Like you got to look within your skill set, yes, but then there's also something to be said for when guys step outside what they normally do to help the team too. So we've talked about this before, where it's like just because you score a goal, you can block a shot, right? Or just because you're the skill guy doesn't mean that you can never finish a hit, etc. So it's like I don't want that to be confused with not doing something that maybe you're a little uncomfortable doing, right? So there's a difference between know your skill set, know where your strengths are, but then sometimes it's like calling for something that maybe isn't something you normally do, but you just being willing to go and do it anyways because that's what the team needs kind of right now. Because like I know I'm sorry I know I'm interrupting your train of thought because there's this idea of like everyone always talks about momentum, like oh now they have the momentum, they're buzzing all over and whatever, and there's a lot of different things that can create that, and I feel like that's kind of a good way or a good question to ask yourself is like how can I be the guy that creates momentum? It's like what could that be? That could be a really good forechecking shift. That could be a really good penalty kill. That could be shot blocks. That could be driving the net really hard and snowing the goalie and causing a stir in front of the net. There's so many different ways that you can be the guy to create the momentum. And I feel like that's a good question that you can kind of frame to yourself. Like at any point in a game, if things are not going well, or if it's been a 3-game slide or you're in a slump or whatever, it's like, how can I create some momentum? Like, what is the thing that would fill that gap right now? And then you can kind of identify it that way. So that was kind of my 2 cents on that
Well,
point.
it's a good 2 cents.
Thank you.
Yeah. But it's also like being like when you're looking at like one of the things I was thinking about here because I'm trying to keep it a little bit for youth hockey as well, right? So because it's a lot easier for us to talk about junior and up, where you can throw a huge hit. Well, what if you're playing Pee Wee, right? What if you're playing Bantam? But so like let's say you're playing for like a smaller center like a Windsor, Sarnia, Oshawa, something like that, and you're playing a big Toronto team or a big Detroit team. Well, as we talked about it several times, you could be playing a team that it's just you are outclassed, like just sheer numbers, tough game. So if I'm like the top scorer for Windsor or Oshawa, and I'm used to getting goals, and when I play against a center roughly the same size, it's like okay, I'm a really offensive player. One of the things you could look at is like if you're playing like a top Toronto team now is like of course you still want to put your goals in, but maybe you have a different challenge, right? Maybe it's not so much, because you're going in there and it's like that's a big challenge to beat the Toronto Marlies or the Toronto Junior Canadians or whoever It is. So maybe your philosophy changes a little bit. Like you're going to throw that offensive flair on there, but maybe your challenge now is to really make life miserable for the top, because you're probably going to play against a top line. So maybe your new goal is to really be miserable against that top line or against those top D, so that they're playing, it's instead of a 8-0 game or an 8-1 or 8-2 game, that gap is closed to 3-2, or maybe you even win because you've done a job of frustrating the other team. That's another thing of what does your team need. So, and what it shows is that you're looking at not so much a personal goals, even though you need to have them. But what it's showing is that you are willing to do what it takes for your team. So I might sacrifice, blowing the zone to get a puck. I might sacrifice that to get a puck, and I'll be more aware of my defensive zone and staying on these top guys and just making their life freaking miserable.
Yeah, I love that. So we had I remember one player, exact kind of situation. He's a defenseman, and every time he would play top AAA teams, I remember because he would come in here to work out. He'd be like, "Yeah, we play these guys this weekend. I can't wait to get in this guy's
Yeah,
face." I can't like he
yeah,
would. That's just how he talked
yeah,
about it, and that's a really good strategy that I feel like a lot of people may not have thought of before, particularly if it's that dynamic of a weak team versus a way better team. But it could be for any matchup, but particularly in that dynamic where it's like, okay, maybe I'm not going to get to be as offensive today because they're just better. That's a great thing. Go chase down their top guy, go head to head with their top guy, and be a pain in his ass the whole game. That's a really great thing you can do for team reasons, but then even just for purely selfish reasons, because players know who the best players are. Probably like from the U15 age up, the guys know like which good players are on which teams and like who's probably going to get drafted high versus not, and they all talk about it, and everybody knows. So if you're in that situation, and even younger, I'm sure it's true too. But if you're in that situation and you know who the good guy is, and you know there's scouts at this game or at this tournament, and people are going to be watching, and you know that is a guy that people are going to be watching, then what better thing to do than be next to that guy all game? You know, so you rally off of that guy's momentum. Like that guy's creating some buzz, and there's people there watching. Then maybe if you make 3 good plays that game on that guy, it's like, oh wow, like he just stopped a really good player, or oh wow, he just got around a really good player, and now all of a sudden you're getting a little bit of looks just because there's somebody else there, as opposed to you're cowering to the team that's just way better, because that is an easy mindset to go into with like, yeah, we're gonna get smacked, and you're almost embarrassed and want to hide because of that humiliation factor, which for sure is real. And like I remember being there. It's like you're gonna walk in, I know we're getting smacked. This is embarrassing. I just want to hide my name because it's embarrassing. But like when the scouts watch, they don't actually care about that. They're watching to see who can play. They don't care about what the score is. So
yeah.
that's a good thing. That's a good strategy.
Yeah, well, to your point, and I was going to say something along those lines later. Is so if you were playing in the Western Hockey League last year or the OHL, who was a high pick last year in the OHL? Colby Barlow. He was the first OHL guy picked. Okay, Colby Barlow. Okay, so let's go say that. So you know that Colby. Some girls are waving at us here again. God, if I don't hear that 20 times a day. So you're playing, and the hype. The hype is he's going to be a top 10 pick. That's what it was last year, Colby Barlow. So if you're playing the Owen Sound attack, if you're even not on the radar anywhere, you're just a schlep playing, right? You're just a guy playing, and no one even knows your name. If you're every scout in the building is there to watch him. Every scout in the building is there to watch him fail to ski and talk about how great he is. And if you're the guy that shuts him down and gets in his face, lays a little body on him, after a whistle, you maybe get him a shot, try to get him off his game. Even if he outplays you, if you're on the ice with him for 10 or 15 shifts or 12 or whatever, or 3, and every time you're on the ice with him, you're a problem for him, well, they're all looking at Barlow, but they also have seen your name. And that's how you become a little bit more wanted and noticed, right? So, like, as you said, don't cower to that. Like, stand the test, right? Like, you show up that game and be in his face, because that guy will be the problem. And now if you're a problem for him, you've just given yourself a name. Now, if you go and do that every night, then all of a sudden you become a guy that, the next night you're playing against London and there's Bonk, or let's say he's another first rounder. You're in his face every night. You're finishing your checks on him. You're frustrating him. You're getting on the pucks. And people notice, okay, this Bonk guy, how did he play? He's like, yeah, well, this Eric guy was all over him all night. Like, it's 3 games now. I saw him against Owen Sound, this guy, this team. He's like, stands up, man. So that gives you a quality, even though you might not get on the score sheet. You might not, but your name gets out there and you become wanted.
Yeah, and it's kind of centering back to what we were talking about there is like, what does the team need? It's like you're identifying that guy's a problem. I'm going to go do something about that guy. And now I'm next to that guy the whole time. So for team reasons, you are now, for selfish reasons, standing out for yourself as an individual, you know?
So, or you could let him play and be a star. You can do that. And they are stars. They're stars for a reason. But, that's what I would say is to my guys is like, why do you let someone else be the star? Take some of the, all the lights on him. Why don't you take some? Do something somehow to get in their grill, to get this limelight.
Just to make sure we're being realistic about this, it's like if you're going up against McDavid when he plays for the Erie Otters, like he's gonna score his goals, man. There's nothing you're gonna do, but all it takes is a couple good plays. You know, it just takes stopping him once. It just takes like that second effort to get a turnover once. It just takes a good finish check on him once, so he can still dominate the game. But all you need is your 2, 3, 4, 5 good moments being on that guy. And he can still be a star and all that, but now you've created some room for some people to take a look at you, right?
Yeah, and if you made his game a lot harder to play, then you're noticeable.
And notice too, like we weren't very specific about how exactly to go about doing that, because it could be an offensive thing, it could be a defensive thing, it could be like if it's a really like Arbor Jack guy, like there's a good example. It's like, you want to go against that guy every game? No. But if you're the guy that sticks his nose in there and you end up getting to the net twice when he's on the ice,
you make him get 3-4 penalties against you because he's pissed at you because you're nothing but a pain in his ass.
Yeah.
So exactly. He gives you a swat in the back of the head, or it takes a 4-minute because he's had enough of your little shit.
Yeah.
Then you become valuable.
Exactly. And so I think that's a kind of a good lead into the second point, is when we talk about the idea of role players, kind of understanding like what makes different role players stick on their team. So on the one hand, it's like, okay, what does my team need, for example? And then how am I going to be able to fill that need? Like, what do I need to be? What do I need to become? Or which attributes do I have that could work right now? And this is how you start to develop the idea of like being a role player, because you get some guys that are really good at different things. Like Patrice Bergeron's one of my favorite examples. Is there like an equivalent to him that I could use? Because now that he's retired, it's hard to keep using him. Is there a Patrice Bergeron type?
Of course there is. I just off the top of my head.
So whatever.
Yeah.
If you get a guy like that, it's like, okay, if we need an offensive situation, he's there. If we need a defensive situation, he's there. If we need a strong like checking situation, he's there. It's like he's a guy that's always going, and that versatility of becoming like that role guy where it's like, I can put you here, I can put you here, I can put you up, you can play up and down the lineup. That's what they say. You know, he could play up and down the lineup. And I think that Cass was kind of like that too for a while in his career, where he could play up with the top guys, and then he could play down the fourth line and go bump and grind and whatever, you know? So I think there's an element of that, and being able to identify why are these certain attributes valuable. And to your point, it's like, okay, you go stop Barlow. That doesn't feel like a great accomplishment when you're 17, 18, 19 playing junior and you want to be the star. It doesn't seem like that when you're U14, 15, 16 and you want to get drafted first round. Like, those are things that are not, either they're not taught, they're not emphasized, they're not stressed at those levels to, I guess, enough where people value them, or it's not rewarded enough where it's seen as actually valuable. Because this is another thing, maybe like a little bit of a criticism for coaches. Like, a lot of times the coaches use the cliches of that we want this guy, we want this guy, we want this guy. But then they go around and they play this guy who maybe he's lazy, doesn't do things the right way, yada, yada, but he's really offensive. And it's like, as the guy that's trying to do all the right things, it's like, that's frustrating. So maybe from like the coaching perspective too, it's like that could be something that we talk about, emphasize, and try to teach at younger levels, where it's like kids learn to value that those kind of attributes, or identify those as ways to stand out. Because a lot of times you wouldn't think of that. Like,
well, so speaking of that, it just reminded me of, remember last year we were watching the game last year. It was the Family Day game, and actually Guelph was playing.
Was that the one with the announcer that we?
Yeah. But my wife texted me during the game, and she was like, Charlie's not playing that physical today. Like, is he hurt? I go, I don't think so. Maybe. He said he had it banged up a little bit. And my brother said he's not playing like normally as physical as he usually does. Like, but he's playing good, but not whatever. So I wasn't at the game. My wife was. So he came out after, and when I was watching too, I said, "Oh, he's not finishing his hits quite as much." So he came out after the game and he had the biggest smile ever. And my wife's like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." And he said, "Coach is so happy with us. He told us before the game, don't take it, like, don't run around, but your job is to shut these guys down." It was Owen Sound actually, the top line, Barlow and all that, and they did it to a T, and they actually ended up on the plus side. So like a lot of times, like as parents and as maybe a viewer of the game that's maybe not as knowledgeable, you don't see the what's going on, right? So he was happier, the coach was happy, everyone was happy about the job of shutting someone else down, and that was how they would win that game, is shutting down their best line. So it's an important role, right? So knowing that, but you, like as a kid, you want to read that too, right? You got to read a little bit what your team needs, and it'll never be a bad thing to get under the skin or with of the better guys,
Yeah.
right?
And so this kind of goes back to the question of like I said at the start of like how to stand out, because I'm not, I want to say this in like the least critical way possible, because I'm not trying to sound like we know and you don't know, but for people that have not played at higher levels or been around higher levels or whatever, it's hard to grasp the fact that those are actually things that make you stand out. When you're, there's the easy things, right? Work hard and you'll stand out. If you got a guy that scores, you're going to stand out. If you're a guy that can make great plays, you'll stand out. If you're a great skater, you'll stand out. It's like those are things that are obvious, and I find those are things that are, especially like the hard work thing. It's like that's something that's really emphasized, but like it can mean so many things.
Yeah, you can hard work and do nothing.
Yeah, right. So it's talking about actually how to do those small things, and that's how you can get. Like I was looking at because I was just talking to him the other day, is Zach Ronaldo. I was looking at his stats from when he played, and he wasn't like a major point guy, right? He played like 10 or 11 years in the NHL, and I'm looking at his stats, and I'm like, okay, here's an interesting question. It's like, this is a guy that clearly wasn't like offensively dominant in the game. So what was it about him? And like I know the answer because I've seen him play. It's like because he had other things. So if you're watching an OHL game and all you have on is your offense rules all hat, it's like then that guy. It doesn't make sense that that guy makes it. You look
Yeah,
at
they like a guy like that gets a lot of credit for what he does, but not enough credit for what he does, right? Because someone that can get, because I remember when he was playing in junior, he was like heavy hitter, heavy, like just hard to play against. Like not the biggest guy either, and he would hammer guys. So it's cool to watch. Like it's like Miggy on Guelph. He gets 6 8 heavy hits a game usually, and it's like people think, oh wow, he's just a lunch bucket guy, and that's very true. But it's like you don't understand how much that brings to the team. So when you take it to the next level, so even if you're a Bantam midget player or U16, U15 player, and that's your attribute, yeah, you will not be appreciated by the mums and dads. They'll just think you're a grinder dummy, doesn't have anything. But there's probably 20 teams in the OHL that are looking, going, okay, we need that because that's a guy that we need, and we can have that for 4 years. That makes life miserable for the other team, and it's like it's yeah, it's not 40 goals, but the minutes and what he does for your team is like tremendous, and that's the difference. Is like the people that know hockey know those little things. Or you get a D that is real quiet, and you go, "Wow, he went in the second or third
right.
round. I didn't see
That was
him. Like
my
I didn't see
exact
him." Yeah,
next example.
but you'll notice that his stick just knocks pucks away, disrupts plays all game, or he gets the puck and it's just a clean exit, or he just gets it out of the zone and it's safe, and he's not worried about. He knows his role. Right, you're not scoring on me, and I'll get the puck out to my forwards or get it out of our zone, and it's over and over, and they just don't make mistakes doing it. And then when there's a physicality involved, maybe they add that element to it too, right? So it's not always like the offensive beauty out there. Chris Phillips was a guy that went first or second overall to Ottawa Senators years ago, and a lot of people say, well, was he really a first overall guy? But yeah, he played. I think it was like 15 to 18 years of pro hockey, and it was like just a shutdown guy, but like he's terrible to play against, right? So like, or a guy that, they look like just grinders, a guy that's just good against the wall and they can protect pucks and they keep it deep and they'll finish hits and they protect it. And they just make these little plays that don't seem like a lot, but it's everything. Yeah. But that's so if I'm the Edmonton Oilers now and I'm looking for, I'm watching and you've already got McDavid, you already got Draisaitl, you got whatever, but I can have that guy doing the grindy work down low. It's just like, yeah, you might not go first overall, but you're going to play a role, and that role is very important.
Yeah, I like looking at defensemen for this question too, because the standout as a forward is a lot more straightforward, right? Because it's like you can go score, you get involved on the offense. If you work really hard, it's like hard forechecks, you hit, and all these things. But if you think
your
about
tracking looks better, your back checking,
exactly, it all looks. There's like a sex appeal of it, right? Where it's like, okay, that looks good. But when you're that quiet defenseman guy, where it's just like, yep, you just get your stick in the lane, you just have good hits and pins, you have good box outs in front of the net, you make a good first pass, you can get up ice, right? You skate well. Like these are things where it's not as obvious. And so that's a good thought experiment to do if maybe you're having a hard time maybe grasping what we're talking about or what we're saying. You can try to think of it that way. It's like, what would make somebody want a defenseman? Because usually it's not offense. You're not looking to your defenseman to be your big offensive generating guy. Obviously, there's exceptions to that, but for the most part, it's like there's not a lot of Erik Karlsson, there's not a lot of Cale Makar, there's not a lot of Victor Hedman, there's not a lot of that. Even in the NHL, there's not a lot of that. So what is making these guys all make it? So I think that's a little bit of a better like thought experiment you can do to answer the standout question, right? So maybe I want to kind of go back more specifically to like if you are in a not optimal situation. I want to talk a little bit about kind of what you were laying out at the start of the episode about looking elsewhere, even at AAA levels, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will sympathize with this. It's like kids jumping team to team or asking for a trade at the higher levels, or you need to change lines or whatever. I was talking to a kid the other day, and I don't know if the kid's the problem or not, but he's been on several teams. And then everywhere he goes, it seems like he brings X number of players with him. So whatever team he's on, it's like now I have 5 other guys from other teams to make this team better now. And then the next year it's another team, and then the next year it's another team, and then it's the spring team. And so I want to kind of talk about a little bit about that, where it's like you're looking, or revisit that, where you're looking for outside help to shine a better light on yourself. Do you kind of understand where I'm going with that?
Oh, 100%.
So you got any thoughts on that, maybe just to start? Because if we put in the frame of once things start going bad, if it's like, well, we need a new coach, or we need another player, or this guy said he was coming and now he didn't come, and that kind of ruins our team, or whatever excuse you want to throw at it, it's like at the end of the day, you're just avoiding the fact that you're not the guy that's turning things around, or you're not the guy that's making enough of a difference, and you need somebody else, kind of thing, right?
Yep. 100%. So that's my whole point of this is it's just so easy to look elsewhere, right? So I think the most important thing is, like, even in youth hockey, okay, let's say I want to be a wanted commodity. If you do well on a poor team, right? Like, find out, like, and I understand being on maybe a poor team is tougher, but it's you can still do your thing, do it very well. And if you're an actual quality hockey player and leader of a team, especially in youth hockey, then you will make a difference, right? But the beautiful thing is if you have to erase it. Here's the problem: like, the second that you say our coach sucks, we need to get rid of the coach, it's in there now. It's in between the 6 inches between your ears, and it's in there. Need to get rid of the coach. So every decision now is like, coach is an idiot, coach is dumb. So that just gets bigger and bigger. It's a snowball running downhill, and then it permeates. What a word!
Wow,
I know, nice. I know. That permeates through, because that's a conversation. You say that to your winger or your deep part. He goes, coach is an idiot, man. So all of a sudden you got 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, mums and dads, saying coach is an idiot, right? So all of a sudden, even though you think you can go and play, like, you might play with the attitude of like, screw you, coach, I'm going to do my thing. And that's a good attitude. But typically you have that lingering around, and now you're distracted. And when you're distracted, you're not playing the game that you should play. And if you're saying I should be on, I wish I was playing with that guy because if I play with that guy, I would get the goals or I would be on the power play or whatever. And as soon as you start going there, like I don't want to make it sound like, oh, just don't care. But what I was saying is earn your way to getting what you want. Not like just because you get to play with someone, like what you're asking is what you're saying is I want it to be easier. I don't want to do all the work because if I played with that guy, I'd get the puck more. If I had the puck more, I'd score more and I'd be better, blah blah blah. That's easy. So what I would say is you sit there and you say, okay, this is a situation. I do want to be on the power play. I do. Like let's be honest. But I can't complain about it because every time they throw someone over the boards for the power play, and if it's not me, and I think the coach sucks and I'd rather play with this guy, then you've got this 400-pound gorilla on your back that's in there. It's on there and it keeps telling you, even though you think it's not there. So the attitude flip has to be, it doesn't matter who I play with. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to do my job better than anybody that I play against or with. I'm going to be the best at what I do. And if that means I get X amount of shifts and I don't get the power play and it takes 3 months to get on it, fine. But I can pretty much, can't guarantee it, but I tell you what, you increase your chances tenfold if you do your job to the extreme, right? So if you're hunting pucks and you're in the right positions and you're tracking hard and you're just doing everything hard, it doesn't go unnoticed. So that's how you get your chance, not by complaining. So if you can free your mind of the negative and focus on only what you can do, not about what others are doing, or not about what the coach's decisions are, not about your teammates, not about the other team's better and all that stuff. If I was playing for the junior Canadians instead of Oshawa junior generals, then I would be a better player. No, not so. Like if you do excellent and play your game to your utmost ability, things will work out for you. So it's getting rid of that mindset. Now, the other thing about that is when you do this, like even when we talk about youth hockey, because we could talk junior, pro, college. Now you have the transfer portals. When you look like, okay, I got to get out of here and play on a better team. The question is it going to be better? That's the thing. Is it going to be better and why? In your mind, you think it might be better, but what if you went from the third line to the fourth or the second to the fourth, or you're playing with 3 plugs instead of 3 offensive players? So that may not be better. So you have to solve your problem at home or for yourself first, right? And then, what was I going to say about this? And then the other thing is like if let's say you have that attitude, I'd rather like in youth hockey, I want to move, I want to switch teams. Like especially if you're in Toronto or Detroit, I'm going to switch teams. Okay, so I'm just saying youth hockey, and then take it to the junior level, college, NHL, whatever. Is what makes you think that they want you? Because they might want you because you have some talent. That might be a default, and especially in youth hockey. But what is it that they really want from you? If you played your game, did your role, played your game, figured out, what the team needs, maybe it's a big hit, whatever it is. If you do that really well, then now you become a wanted commodity anyways. So like if things are a little bit of frustrating and the word, at the end of your youth season, the other teams calls you and says, we want you to come to play for us, not you call them and say, I'd like to play for you. That's a different ballgame. If you make yourself a wanted commodity, I'm even talking youth hockey, now you've given yourself options, right? So now it's like they're asking you to play for them, not you saying, okay, I don't like it here. I want to play for you because I'll be better off. It's a better team. It's a better coach. It's a better whatever. And like, colleges are the same thing. NHL, OHL, or CHL, it's the same thing. If you are outstanding at what you do, when people are looking at making their team better, you might be on the list of the one person that they want to get on that team. Yeah. And that's an earned thing, right? It's not like a whiny thing.
Yeah, I've a lot of things. So maybe in reverse order, uh, the first thing or the last thing you were saying there is about like the team wanting you. So you want to make them want you instead of you call them and ask. And I find, especially in junior, because you can jump leagues, I have this
Like a
conversation.
junior B,
Yeah,
C.
yeah. Like I've talked to at least 10 kids in the last couple years about this kind of thing, where they're like, yeah, I think I need to go here because of this, or I think I need to go here because of that. And I get into this big like discussion with them about, okay, are you asking them to go, or are they recruiting you? Because if you're saying, yeah, I'm going to go there because it's a better team, it's a better league, it's whatever, but
They're scouted more.
yeah, but this is what they say, right? But I'm like, even if all those things are true, which is definitely debatable, but even if all those things are all true, if you go there and they don't actually want you, then you're
Or
not.
they'll take a look at
Yeah,
you.
well, this is
Yeah.
usually what happens, right? The mentality is, yeah, we'll look at you for sure, because and a lot of these guys too, like they'll have an advisor or they'll have somebody who's like trying to send them here or there, or whatever. So they call a team. It's like, hey, I got this kid. I'm gonna bring him out to you, and they'll be like, yeah, sure, bring him out, sure, bring him out. We'll take a look. It's not we're dying to have this guy, where the head coach is calling you every day, like, hey, you need to come here, like you need to be here. We want you to be the guy, yada yada. That's very different. So it's important to know like where you stand. So if you're not that guy that's super wanted, then to your exact points, like is jumping ship going somewhere else going to make things better?
You'll have the same problem.
Well, and that was another point that I wrote down is like
See?
as as a guy that has been through this, and you have too. It's like I've played on the first line with all the guys that I thought I wanted to play with. I've played on the third line with guys that I didn't think were any good. I've played on different teams. I played on multiple junior teams. I played in college. I played in all these places where I've had the array of experiences, and there's always something that could be better. So even if they put you with the guys you think, there's going to be something to bitch about, man. There's always something to bitch about, right? If your mentality, if your philosophy is, well, these guys this, if it's external, if you're always looking external for something, or externally for something to be solved, then you're always going to find something to bitch about. And I didn't finally make peace with this until I was probably 22, playing it in university now, where it was just like I just accepted what I was going to do there as my job, and I actually didn't care about what my line mates did. I wasn't mad at, like, obviously there's points of frustration in the game and etc. But like my overall philosophy of hockey now was my job is this is, and I knew what my job was.
Yeah.
That's another important
Well,
point.
that's the number one
right?
important thing.
It's like you need to know what exactly you're supposed to be doing, right? So that's important. But once I knew that, or what my coach expected of me, or what my coach thought of me, or where they saw me fitting in, I just accepted that and I stopped looking for this guy to do this, or this guy to do this, or this guy to do this, because that's not where I'm going to find the solution. And that's kind of my last point is like, at the end of the day, if you can keep finding an issue with things, but it comes down to one of two things. Either there's a hole in your game somewhere, or you're not doing what the coach is expecting of you. And like those, it is going to boil down to one of those two things. Either like you're not capable of doing something because there's a hole in your game that you need to address, or the coach is expecting you to do X and you're not doing X, or you're doing it half the time, or
Yeah,
you're focused
consistently.
more on.
Yeah.
So like that is where the root of the issue is going to come down. And if you notice, both of those two things have to do with you. It has nothing to do with anything external. And there's nothing that's more of a pet peeve to coaches as a coach that than a guy that is like, well, this guy this, or some external factor that they want to throw it on. Because as the coach, all you're thinking of is the thing that they could be doing better. You know, and sometimes kids just don't want to hear it, man. So it's like
Yeah, it's hard to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Like people don't want to hear necessarily until they're ready to hear the truth. But to your point, I'm going to use you for an example. So you were never a 40 goal scorer, right? So you go in, you're playing junior, you're playing university hockey. So I'm trying to put this into someone like even in midget, whatever, you think you're going to get scouted, right? So, or a junior guy getting scouted for college. Like you can get very, very frustrated. So I'm going to just maybe use you an example. So you can be very frustrated because you finish every hit. You're going on a 2-on-1, but you're like, let's say your centerman is good, but he's just so selfish and he won't get you the puck. Like if he thinks there's a 1% chance of scoring as opposed to your 99, he's going for his one. And you do your things, and you know, let's say you're busting down, maybe create a 2-on-1, and you go to the net, and you're there. All you have to do is tap it in. He wants to score, so you can get very frustrated, and to a certain degree, yes, but you, the the scouts out there see what you're doing. That's what you have to understand. The people that are watching hockey see that your habits are: you finished the check, you got the puck out, you went up the ice hard, you went there, created an option for the guy. He didn't use the option 6 times that game. it looks bad on him, not you, right? So your totals at the end of the year might not be 35 goals and 35 assists. Might end up being like 19 and 19, but the habits are the right things. So if you do it and you're good enough and you do that consistently and maybe the next season or a trade or whatever happens, you play with someone else and those habits are the same, but you play with a different player. Well, maybe because you're going to the net now, the next year you do get your 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever, right? So it's like you have to just do your job to the best of your ability. And then the next point on that is if you're always looking externally, then it's, like for sure it's going to be a problem, because if you have to move teams, if you have to continue to look at moving teams because you need to play with better players, better coaches, and all this stuff, and you move from team to team, it's an issue. It's an issue because if you're the guy that is actually the player that, or a player that's in the top 300 in Ontario to play in the OHL or NHL or whatever, then you can handle any team that you're on. But more importantly is that if you're actually the guy, if you're a top first round pick, let's say, if you get drafted to a poor team, you're going to have the exact same issues, because a poor team, like a team that drafts first overall or top 10 pick, is a team that hasn't had success the year before typically, and they might be in the basement for a year or two. So what do you do? Do you go to your OHL team or your college team and you start blaming again? Or do you do your habits and do it to the best of your ability? Because if you're truly the guy, you'll make things work. So that's the thing. And then you see that at every level. The guys or families that don't talk properly with their kids and want the easy way out, it's never going to be, they're never happy because it's always someone else's fault.
And just I want to continue using myself as an example here because I want to like paint a picture of how this can be confusing as a kid. So when I was 16 or 17, like I scored 30 goals my second year in junior. So I scored a lot of goals that year. And I was getting a lot of attention from schools because of that. But I didn't have a good understanding of why I was getting those goals. Right? I didn't know why, because I wasn't taught like these things that we now
you're
talk
just a
about.
kid playing hockey
Yeah.
and you're doing well.
I didn't know what the reason was.
Yeah.
So when circumstances changed and I was on a different team and I had a different coach, I didn't know what those habits were that were getting me those goals. All I thought was I need to be on the power play so I can score, or I need more offensive time so I could score, or I need to play with these guys so I can score. That was where my mentality was, because I was a little bit misled by my 30 goal season when I had just happened to be lucky enough to have an optimal setup for me. But I didn't learn what I needed to learn so that I could bring it anywhere I went. I didn't know. So when I went and had to kind of reestablish myself, I was unable to do that with a new team because I didn't know what I did to have the success specifically from before. So now I've used this story before too. Like I remember my coach when I went to that new team, after I was there for 2 years, my second year, he finally told me, he's like, I think like you should be playing like Scott Hartnell. Like watch Scott Hartnell play. That's how you should play. And one, I was thinking like Scott Hartnell. Like what are you talking about? Like I don't
You don't
score.
even think he's good.
No, I don't even think he's good. Like so first, like a little bit shame on my coach, because it's like tell me that when I first get there the year before, so I have a full year to understand what that means and all that. But putting that aside, it's like maybe he had a point, right? Maybe he had a point. Like I was a bigger guy. I knew how to use my frame a little bit, and his expectations on me were probably different than the coach before. But I didn't know how to apply that knowledge now to reestablish those things, to make myself dominant again. And that was what happened. That was a huge reason why all of that school stuff didn't end up working out, because I couldn't find my game again after that. Once the team switch happened, right? So it's very important that you can be misled. You get a little bit of success with something. It's important that you understand why you're having it, so that you can equip yourself with the tools to do it anywhere and replicate it and make modifications to it if you need to and fill the gaps in. It's really important to be able to identify why what you're doing is working or not working. Those things are super, super important.
Yeah. And that's why like I always say to kids is try to have 4 or 5 things that you do that are your base foundation.
Thank God, man, I would
habits.
have killed for someone to tell me that. Like, it's so funny.
Well, it's easy because you always come
It's
back.
not hard. It's not hard.
You have a game or two, and maybe it's not points, or maybe your ice time's lower, or whatever, and then you could just simply for yourself go back to your 3 to 4 things and say, am I actually doing it? Like, oh, I'm supposed to get 4 shots on net a game. let's say 4 to 6 shots on game, I'm getting 0 chances. Okay, why? Am I dishing the puck off? Am I not taking to the net? Am I not doing the habits to get me my shots? But anyways, you go to your 3, 4, 5 things, and you say, "Oh, yeah, I've done this. I haven't done this, or I've done it, but I haven't done it consistently." Right? Consistency is the big key.
And that takes
So
some
you could
a
throw
piece of
you could
honesty,
throw
man.
throw 18 hits in a game. That's great, but the next game you throw 0. That's not great, right? So you got to be consistent.
Yeah. So kind of maybe the last little wrinkle I want to throw into it. Um, kind of this idea, like we were just kind of talking about this, like start with yourself. What can you do to change what's going on and those things? I want to flip it to on the parents for a second too, because particularly youth levels, I find that the parents can be a huge help or a huge problem, and they can be just as guilty or more guilty of inflicting certain thought patterns on the player. So, for example, the coach is an idiot thing is probably the most prevalent example that I can think of, where obviously all the parents, not all the parents, but a lot of times parents, they get some kind of issue with the coach, and then it's like the coach is an idiot. You start talking about the coach is an idiot, and then what happens? The kid hears it on the way home, or I don't understand why the coach is doing this, and what. And
It's the subtle things too, like
that's a great
just what
point.
you went with. It's the subtle things. Why did he have this guy on the power play? What does he see in this kid? Those are the subtle things that that perpetuate. Another big word.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it can come off as harmless too. It could be like, hey, like did your coach say why this kid is doing this? Or did your coach say why you're not doing this? Or what? And it's like the implication is I don't understand what the coach is doing. Coach isn't good. I'm visibly frustrated by it. I'm upset by it. And now this kid who's 10, 13, 15, 16 is now having to hear that in the left ear. He hears his coach in the right ear, and now he has a conflict in his head about maybe my coach is an idiot. Maybe my coach is doing this the wrong way, and maybe I should be getting this
Yeah.
and
And
these
there's
kinds
just
of
a
things.
tone of negativity.
Right. Right. So I want to kind of flip it to you. This is kind of my last thing to finish at least is maybe a couple words with for the parents on this idea of like if you identify your kid is in a poor situation, define that however you like, or things just aren't going great or not optimal or whatever. And then this on this thread of like becoming a wanted commodity, like how can as parents you start with yourself as parent and make sure that that's not something that you're also contributing to, because at the same time as your kid is looking externally for an issue, it's like as the parent you can do the exact same thing where it's like you could be throwing out all these external things that you really don't have a lot of control over as the player, and now little Johnny is hearing this all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty simple. You got to be self aware. You first of all want to be a person that like if you're a person that doesn't solve problems and blames everybody in your own life, then it's probably not you're probably not going to be that beneficial to your kid, right? Like if my business failed because everyone's stupid and they went and bought a hockey product somewhere else and they don't really understand my business, like they're so stupid, like it's not my fault. No, 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 no. Did you market? Are you doing a good job? Are you actually the best at what you do? And go through the things and be honest with yourself. Did you pick up a telephone? That's an old word, by the way. Did you pick up a telephone? Did you just send your emails? Do people know who you are? Do they know that you're relevant? Are you out there? Do you go watch some games? Do you talk to people? Do they know who you are? Do they want to be there? Do you all that stuff? That's when you could say people are stupid, or I'm not. But you look inside. My business is working or not working because of this. As a hockey player, so if you're a mom or a dad, you're at home, you're trying to help your son be a hockey player, and that you come home every day and the boss is a jerk and everything at work. No, but seriously, everything at work. Or I tried losing weight, but I can't. I try exercise, but it's too early. You're just loading your kid up with a pile of excuses. That's what they hear. What you hear is what you become, or what you hear is what you say. What you say is what you become. Right. So, and then your patterns will follow what you're saying all the time. So it's very hard. So you could kids could be starting in the hole right there. But if you're a dad that says, I'm really trying to lose some weight, um, and you have an honest conversation with your son, it's like it's really hard because I like Friday nights having like 10 beers. I just like it too much, and I like pizza, but I'm trying, and I'm not succeeding, but I got to keep trying. And you see that at least I'm trying, and I'm trying to solve my own problems. I'm not blaming the beer for making me fat. I'm drinking the beer, right? So and stuff like that. So it starts like kind of like with that, right?
Yeah.
And
Man, that's I gotta jump in. That's so huge. I want to just highlight that point because I wasn't even necessarily thinking of it along those lines. I was more thinking of it just in the terms of the hockey.
it's not
But
hockey.
but it's
I was talking to a coach the other day. I had a consultation. It was yesterday, and the thing he said is that he coaches his son, and I'm not giving the name away. I'm not giving you where he's from, all that stuff. So no one knows who it is. I'm just telling the story. So he said, I'm having a problem. He's young. I'm coaching my son. And the other day he was kind of misbehaving and he was slashing a kid. And he was having a really bad attitude. And like every time when he was losing drills and stuff like that, he would trip and he would be like kind of whiny. Like he didn't say it exactly like that, but I said, okay, it sounds like your kid's being a little whiny and taking advantage of you. Right. But the end of it, we went through this conversation. I said, to me, coaching is like parenting. So this is in a coach's situation. Teaching hockey is like parenting. If you parent well, you're probably gonna or have a philosophy of parenting. Your team is going to be, or your coach. How am I saying this? It's to me, coaching is parenting. If you have a grasp on your team, like so, I asked this guy. I said, when your kid misbehaved, if he was at home and he did something ridiculously stupid like that, just hauled off, or kids were over at the house, he started tripping them and pushing them, what would you have done? Oh, well, lost it. So what? Throw him in his room, tell the kids to go home? He goes, yeah, like basically around that. Yeah. So on the ice, why didn't you do that? Because it's different. Ice is different. So like the parenting philosophy is huge. So when we're looking at the hockey side of parenting, it's like, well, who are the kids going to look to first? They're around you all the time. If you're raised with excuse-itis, and yeah, excuse-itis. It's in the book. I learned that from the book of The Magic of Thinking Big a long time ago. But excuse-itis, it'll get you nowhere. Everybody else's fault. So that's a learned behavior. Whereas, like, then I'm going to give my wife a lot of credit, and I'll give myself some. But I love how my wife is with that. My wife always makes our kids look at what could you have done differently. Look inside, right? Look at your behaviors, and she doesn't make excuses for herself. She just is honest. So as a parent, that's 100% where it starts. Do you come across with excuses and hatred and all the negatives that you instill that in your kids? So that, because what is the default? If your kid doesn't get ice, what are you going to say? If you're an excuse-itis person or a negative person, you're going to blame everybody else. It's just the way it's going to be. And your kid's going to, that's the default. That's what they hear all the time. So that's a natural thing. So it's important that, I didn't get my homework done because of this. Well, no, you didn't get your homework done because you didn't feel like doing your homework. Don't blame time or anything else, right? And everything leaks into the hockey part. So that's number one. And then so when the things do go south, it's like and now don't get me wrong, your kids are allowed to be pissed. You're allowed to be pissed. You're allowed to think that you're getting screwed. You're allowed to think that for a second. It's okay, because that is sometimes what makes you think about how do I become better. So you're allowed to have a pity party, but you got to make them short. And you got to always say, okay, now what can I do differently? What can I do to make this situation better? So, I've said this to my kids several times. It's like, if you're not getting what you deserve, what can you do better? Because I guarantee you, if like as long as you're somewhat quality of a player, that if you're doing the things that got you to the level that you're at and you do it extremely well, there's probably a good chance, if you're a good player, that you're going to get the extras. Like if you are relentless in a forecheck and a back check in your D zone, like relentless, and you make half intelligent plays, the coach can't help but get you out there. Can't help, So like I don't like excuses. And if you really look, can you be better? That's the question. Could you have done it better? Could you have done it better?
Yeah, and I think the reason I jumped in when you were talking about the parent thing because I was thinking of, when you're talking about the hockey stuff, you don't want to be putting fuel on the fire. But if you're a parent who you're trying to give good messaging about hockey, but then you come home from work and bitch about this and that and the other thing, or you come home from whatever, or whatever's going on at the house, you're bitching about this and that and this, and you're not doing the thing that you're trying to tell them to do, then it is a learned behavior. To your point, it's like they are in that environment all the time, and they are definitely going to integrate some of that into their own way of being because of that. So it has to be going beyond hockey. It can't just be, let's try to have good messaging around hockey. It's like, yes, let's try to do that, but also how is your day-to-day messaging in the other 12 hours of the day that you're awake around that, or the other 6 hours of the day when you're with your kid that have nothing to do with hockey? What is the messaging around that? What are they pulling off of you? Because that is where the difference maker will be from the parenting side of it. And that's kind of what I wanted to point out to finish off, to throw a little wrinkle of it towards the parents. It's like you can try to be helpful and make sure that they're not doing these things that we've been talking about, but at the end of the day, if that's the type of kid they are, then it's probably a little bit of a reflection of what you're doing with yourself as well. And we're all guilty of it. Like, we're all guilty of playing the blame game and saying this thing and that thing and whatever, but the effort is what's important. To your point, talking about that parent perspective. I'm trying to do this, it's not working, I'm going to keep trying and trying to get towards that as much as you can, so that it's believable for the kids and they can see that it works or it doesn't for you in actual life. And that's actually something they can learn now. It's not just, yeah, my dad's telling me not to bitch about the coach, but he's been bitching about his boss for the last 4 months.
Well, that's, I've always said that, like I used to get a kick out of it when parents would say, tell their kids, you need to work hard. And they'd be, after the game, they'd have the mad mug and, because they just didn't work hard enough. And did you shoot pucks today? Did you this? Did you this? Did you this? Like, on them. And then I'm not being a jerk here. It's like, if the kid was to turn the tables and just say, what did you do today? Because I did this with my son, right? Not that part, but like, how can I ask my son, and I say this today, how can I ask my son or my kids to be excellent today and judge them, right? Let's remove hockey. Avery's a nurse. Carter's in construction. And if I say, how was your day today? Good. What did you do at work? This. Well, did you do this? Did you do this extra? Why did you take a break? And did you read at night? Did you to make yourself better so you succeed in life? And then I went to work and I just didn't feel like, because I'm the boss and I don't feel like doing much today. And I come home and give them shit when I know damn well that I didn't do everything I could have. Like, I mean, everything I could have today. When I was on the ice teaching those kids last week, did I put everything in? I think my answer would be, I did a very good job and I put my heart and soul into it and, all that stuff. But like, did I leave anything on the table? Probably. I wasn't perfect. So I think a lot of times we want our kids to be more than we could ever be. But when a kid comes home and you're on the couch reading the paper, do they do that anymore? Okay, no, scrolling
I'm
your
sure
phone.
Someone does, yeah.
Scrolling your phone or watching Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And you tell your kid that, are you working hard? You're not shooting pucks and you didn't go for a run. It's like, what? You're not helping me, man, because you're not a great example. Whereas, and I guess at some point the parents maybe have the luxury of not having to grind. I don't know. But if you're asking for excellence from your kid, if you're not showing any excellence or a will to get better on a daily basis or something, then they don't hear what you have to say. So the message is not the right message. So I just encourage parents to maybe if you the old adage is, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it. Right? Because the coach is probably not an idiot, or he might be, but that's not the problem.
Yeah.
Solve your own problems. I think it's very, very important.
Yeah, I like that. And just to be clear, it's not about being the CEO of a Fortune 500 company as a parent, because I think it's fair enough too. Like, as a parent, it's like, yeah, you made mistakes. Like, even for me, like, I reflect on my hockey career as one example, and I'm like, yeah, like, there's mistakes in there. And if I had a kid that I could try to make an impression on, it's like, I would want them to be better than me, but it's like the bar has to be something that's reasonable. And you want your kid to be better than you. Like, I can understand that for sure. But are you still trying or doing your best to be an example? And, my dad has said that to me before. It's like, he knows, he's like, I know that I make mistakes as a parent. I know I'm not a perfect parent, but the hope Yeah, but the hope is that you guys end up a little bit better than me, and then your kids end up a little bit better than you, and then and that's fine to want that. But when you're demanding and when you're trying to throw things onto your kid, whether it's attitude, whether it's how they deal with bad situations or whatever, it's like you need to make sure that you're being reasonable and you're approaching it with a little bit of self-awareness and humility about how you're going about it, right? Because it's fair enough that you want things to be better for them than you, but when you're grinding down on your 10-year-old or your 12-year-old or your 15-year-old, they're going to be looking at you. It's like, what are you doing today? You know?
So maybe this is the last point for me, I
Yeah.
think, is that as I'm speaking about this, I think maybe a lot of times, like when it comes to the hockey side, maybe if you just don't know, I think a good idea is that if you can find someone that can be honest with you and just seek advice, not a pity party. Like, so if someone was to ask me and say, Andy, what do you think of this situation? You know, I would, that would be the first thing I would say is like, try to solve. Yeah, but the coach, I know the coach is, he should be better, should be doing better, but like, let's try. And I've said this to kids on my consults and stuff. Let's try this, this, and this. So one kid actually sent back to me that I was on 2 weeks ago. I had a consult with him. He said, all those things you said to me worked and I'm having a great year. Right? It wasn't necessarily someone else's fault. He made it better. So if you can find someone that you can trust, that actually not going to listen or tell you what you want to hear, but tell you something like that, like how can you keep it in check? Like, he's not getting enough ice. Okay, well, how much ice do you think he's getting? And take a look, and it's like the difference might be a minute or two, or maybe you're totally wrong, but maybe it's the time of ice that you're not happy with or whatever. It's like, find a way to fix it first, yourself first, and then you can start the blame game. We've done this several times, like in our family with different players. It's like, just look deep and let's be honest with ourselves. And then when you do, it's like there's usually a change.
I know it's hard.
And
to
now
do,
it's
man.
a matter of keeping it consistent.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to do, but I didn't really plan on going on a tear on the parents at the end there. But
no,
I think
you don't. No. I want to clear that up. I don't think we're tearing on parents. I think it's because like I'm a parent.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, because
like,
I'm a parent. It's just like, but this is the reality, right? Like, why do you think a team would want to know what your family life's like, right? Because if you got idiot parents, there's a good chance you're an idiot. If you got people that are really dedicated, hardworking people, there's a good chance you're good, hardworking people, and all that stuff. So it's not tearing on them. It's just like for parents, it's because as a parent, it's different than someone else's kid. It's just, it is. When you look at your son or your daughter going through something and you feel like it could be, well, I'm trying to think of where they're getting picked on or they're getting whatever, then you become a little bit more defensive. You're the dad. You don't want your kids to suffer. But sometimes it's that deep look within that changes everything. And it's guidance for parents. It's guidance for kids. It's like, you don't want a team full of excuse-itis kids. You want a team full of problem solvers. And that's the character, right? That's what character is, right? It's what you do when it's hard. It's what you do when it's hard, man. Do you cry? Do you walk away? Do you crumble? Or do you fix it? And that's the difference.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Beat that to death at the end there, so that's good. Okay. Let's shut her off. That's it for today. Bye.